The rain fell hard as Ethan's car struggled up the steep, narrow road. His GPS had stopped working an hour ago, and now, thick fog pressed against his windows, hiding everything beyond a few feet. Just as he thought he might have to turn back, he spotted something strange through the mist. A large wooden sign hanging crookedly from two broken posts. It read, "Welcome to Temurun." But there was no town in sight. Imagine driving down an unfamiliar road on a stormy night, your GPS dead and thick fog swallowing the way ahead. Suddenly, a broken sign appears through the mist. "Welcome to Temurun." No map shows it. No one you know has heard of it. Yet something, curiosity, fear, destiny, pulls you forward. This is the chilling journey of Ethan Cole, an ordinary man, who stumbles upon an extraordinary town. Temurun is a place suspended between worlds, where abandoned buildings hide impossible secrets and the walls themselves seem to whisper. In its dusty library, Ethan finds a book with his own name, and realizes his life is being written as he lives it. Every twist, every turn, pulls Ethan deeper into the story of Temurun, a story where wrong choices trap you forever, and right choices are far from clear. The suspense is relentless. The mystery layers upon itself, leading to doors that promise salvation or eternal imprisonment. And even if you escape Temurun, does it ever truly let you go? This is not just a story. It's an experience. A place where you'll question reality, fate, and the cost of curiosity. The rain was relentless, hammering against the windshield like 1,000 tiny fists. Ethan leaned forward, squinting through the wipers as they struggled to keep up. The world beyond the glass was a blur of gray, trees hunched and twisted under the storm, and the narrow road curled like a black ribbon into the unknown. He checked the dashboard again. No signal, no GPS, no way to call for help. "Perfect," Ethan muttered, gripping the steering wheel tighter. Every few minutes, the road dipped or twisted without warning, making his small car shudder and groan. He hadn't seen another vehicle in over an hour. It felt like he had driven off the edge of the world. And then, just as he considered turning back, something flickered through the fog. A shape. Something wooden. Ethan slowed the car, tires skidding, slightly on the slick asphalt. The shape sharpened into a sign, old and battered, its wood splintered from years of rain and wind. It hung from two posts by a single rusted chain, creaking gently in the stormy wind. The words carved into the wood made Ethan's heart give a small, uncomfortable jump. "Welcome to Temurun." He stared at it, frowning. He had grown up hearing stories from his grandmother about a town with that name, a town that appeared when it was needed and disappeared when it wasn't. But he had always thought she was just telling fairy tales. Now, here it was, standing before him. Ethan shifted in, his seat suddenly aware of how silent it was. Even with the rain, even with the engine running low and rough, the world felt muted, as if the storm itself was holding its breath. He glanced around. There was no town, no buildings, no lights, only mist curling across the empty fields like the hands of something unseen. A sharp instinct flared in his chest. Turn back, leave, now. But curiosity, dangerous, stubborn curiosity, rooted him to the spot. What harm could it do to go a little further? Maybe there was shelter ahead. Maybe someone could help him find his way. Swallowing his unease, Ethan eased his foot onto the gas pedal. The car crept forward, tires crunching over gravel and broken branches. The sign swung wildly behind him, the chain screaming in protest. For a moment, as he glanced in the rearview mirror, he thought he saw something. A dark figure standing near the sign, watching. But when he blinked, it was gone. The road bent sharply, disappearing into the mist. Ethan gritted his teeth and followed it. Ahead, something waited. Something that had been waiting a long, long time. The road narrowed even further, as if the world itself was shrinking around Ethan. Tall trees leaned over the cracked asphalt, their dripping branches reaching. Like skeletal arms across his path, the mist grew thicker, curling against the hood of the car, turning the high beams into useless white smears. Ethan kept driving, heart pounding in his ears. He told himself he could always turn around. He told himself this was just another small, forgotten town. But deep down, a part of him knew this was no ordinary place. Minutes slipped by, or maybe hours. Time felt loose, stretched thin. And then, without warning, the trees broke apart, and Ethan rolled into the town of Temurun. At first, he wasn't sure what he was seeing. The shapes of buildings loomed out of the mist like abandoned movie sets. Crumbling brick houses sagged against each other, their windows boarded up or shattered like broken teeth. Rusted street lamps stood crooked in their sockets, draped with hanging vines. A few old cars, long dead, sat by the roadside, tires melted into the ground, their metal bodies chewed by rust. Ethan slowed to a crawl, staring. There were no lights, no movement, not even the flicker of a curtain or the sound of a dog barking. It was a town, frozen, not destroyed. Forgotten, but stubbornly standing, as if waiting for someone, or something, to remember it. He rolled into what must have once been the town square. In the center, a stone fountain stood, its basin dry and cracked, but the statue above it still clung to some lost dignity. An angel with one broken wing, arms reaching to the sky. Ethan parked beside the fountain and killed the engine. The silence that followed was immense. No birds, no insects, no wind. Only the soft patter of rain, growing lighter now, tapping against the roof like cautious fingers. He sat there for a long moment, hands frozen on the steering wheel, feeling the weight of the place settle over him. The mist moved slowly across the square, almost alive, hiding and revealing parts of the town as if breathing. And then, just as he opened the door to step out, he heard it. Footsteps. Soft, deliberate. Not the echo of his own, but someone else's, approaching across the broken cobblestones. Ethan turned quickly, heart hammering, but he saw no one. "Lost?" a voice said behind him. He whirled around. Standing a few feet away was an old man, tall and thin, holding a black umbrella over his head. His suit looked like something from another era, clean, pressed, and somehow untouched by the rain. His face was wrinkled, but his sharp eyes glittered with a strange light, far too bright for someone his age. Ethan began, struggling for words. "I didn't mean to. The road. I'm lost." The old man smiled, but there was no warmth in it. Only a kind of knowing? "Few come here by accident," the man said. His voice was soft, almost kindly, but beneath it Ethan heard something else, something dangerous. "And fewer leave once they do." Ethan's mouth went dry. Before he could speak again, the old man tipped his hat in a slow, deliberate gesture and turned, walking away into the mist. Within seconds, he vanished, swallowed by the gray. Ethan stood, there, soaked and shivering, feeling more alone than he had ever felt in his life. Above him, the angel with the broken wing pointed eternally at the heavy, colorless sky. The town of Temurun waited, and Ethan knew he had no choice but to go deeper. Ethan stood for a long moment beside the dry fountain, watching the mist curl and weave through the silent streets. The old man's words still echoed in his head. Few leave once they do. He shivered, not from the cold, but from something older, something that felt stitched into the stones beneath his feet. Gathering his courage, Ethan started walking. The town unfolded around him, one eerie step at a time. Shops lined the streets, or what was left of them. Their names were faded, their windows cracked or missing entirely. Yet inside, behind broken glass and crumbling door frames, strange things caught his eye. A bakery, for example. Its shelves still stacked with loaves of bread. The bread was dusty, yes, but not moldy. It looked fresh, impossibly fresh, like someone had baked it just moments ago. An old hair salon sat next door. The chairs were toppled, but strands of hair still clung to rusted scissors left open. On the floor, as if the customers had simply evaporated. Ethan felt it in the air, a wrongness so thick it weighed down his steps. He passed an old toy shop, its windows fogged and cracked. Inside, toys were arranged neatly on shelves, facing the window with glassy, waiting eyes. A rocking horse moved gently, back and forth, though the air was still. The town wasn't dead. It was waiting. The mist shifted, revealing an old schoolhouse at the far end of the street. Its front door hung open on a single hinge, creaking as it swung back and forth in a rhythm too slow, too deliberate. Drawn by something he couldn't name, Ethan crossed the square and pushed the door wider with a hesitant hand. Inside, the smell of chalk and old paper filled the air. Long wooden desks sat in perfect rows. A blackboard stretched across the front. Of the room, dusty but still legible. Scrawled across it in neat handwriting was a lesson. History of Lost Places, Temurun, Ebonshade, Hollow Fen. Remember, departure is not guaranteed. The words looked fresh, as if written just minutes ago. Ethan backed away slowly, his heart racing. That's when he heard it. Faint whispers. Low and urgent, slipping between the walls. A child's laughter, soft, broken, echoing from nowhere. "Who's there?" he called, voice trembling. The whispers hushed, replaced by a deep, suffocating silence. He turned to leave, but the mist outside the schoolhouse had thickened, swirling like a living thing. Shapes moved within it. Ethan caught glimpses. A hand pressed against a window, a flash of white fabric, the glint of an eye watching from the shadows. He stumbled back into the street. The town had changed. It felt smaller, the buildings leaning. Closer, their broken windows like open mouths. The road he had come from was gone, swallowed by fog. There were only two directions now, deeper into town or into the mist. And something told Ethan that stepping into the mist was a mistake he would never return from. Breathing hard, he spotted something just ahead through the thickening fog. Something different. A huge, looming structure with tall stone steps. Large double doors stood slightly ajar, like a mouth waiting to be entered. A sign above the entrance, almost hidden by vines, read, "Temurun Public Library." Ethan hesitated only a second longer before moving toward it. The whispers rose again, following him like a tide, and behind him, unseen and silent, something else began to follow. The heavy doors of the library groaned as Ethan pushed them open. The air inside was colder than outside, dry and thick with the scent of old paper, dust, and something faintly metallic, like the smell of a storm about to break. For a moment, Ethan simply stood there, letting his eyes adjust. Rows upon rows of towering bookshelves stretched into darkness. The shelves were crammed with books, fat, leather-bound volumes, thin, cracked paperbacks, journals tied shut with twine. None of them had printed covers or titles. Each spine bore only a name, written in thin, looping handwriting, almost like someone had scribbled it in a hurry. And as Ethan stepped further inside, a realization prickled at his skin. Every single book had a name. Hundreds. Thousands. Maybe more. The mist outside pressed against the tall windows, making the library feel like a small island floating in an endless gray sea. His footsteps echoed, softly as he moved deeper into the aisles. The floor beneath him was made of worn wooden boards that creaked with every cautious step. Strange gaps lined the walls where some books were missing, leaving shadowy holes like missing teeth. He ran his fingers along the spines, reading names out loud under his breath. Margaret Hensley, Thomas Calder, Elise Benton. None of them meant anything to him. He turned a corner and froze. There, on a shelf no different from the others, was a book bearing his own name. Ethan Cole. His heart stumbled in his chest. The book was old, bound in cracked brown leather, the gold lettering nearly faded to nothing. His fingers hovered over it, trembling slightly. Every instinct screamed at him not to touch it, but he did. The book was warm, almost pulsing against his skin, like something alive. Slowly, Ethan pulled it free. Dust fell from the shelf in soft clouds. He cradled the book in both hands for a moment, breathing heavily before finally opening it. The first page was blank. So was the second. And the third. Then, on the fourth page, words began. Small, careful handwriting that looked eerily familiar. It was a story. His story. The first paragraph described his morning. The rushed breakfast, the spilled coffee, the way he had argued with himself about whether to take the back roads. It detailed his confusion when the GPS died, the way the storm gathered in the distance. Page after page it described everything with chilling precision. Arriving at the broken sign, seeing the words, "Welcome to Temurun." Meeting the old man with the umbrella. It was written as if whoever had penned these words had been standing beside him, recording every thought, every heartbeat. Ethan's hands grew clammy. He flipped forward, desperate to see how far the story went, and then, near the very middle of the book, he read a sentence that hadn't happened yet. He turned around and saw her. A cold breath touched the back of his neck. He stiffened. Slowly, almost against his will, Ethan turned. There, standing between the towering bookshelves, was a girl in a white dress. Pale, almost translucent in the gloom. Her hair hung loose around her shoulders. Her eyes, wide, gray, and hollow, stared straight into his. She said nothing. Neither did Ethan. His throat felt too tight for words. The girl lifted one hand and pointed deeper into the library toward a far-off, forgotten corner shrouded in even thicker shadows, and in that moment, Ethan understood. He hadn't just found his story. He was still inside it, and it was still being written. The girl stood still as a photograph, her white dress stirring slightly in a breeze Ethan could not feel. Her pale arm remained raised, her thin finger pointing into the deeper shadows of the library. Ethan's breath misted the cold air. He swallowed hard, the book with his name still clutched in his sweating hands. For a long moment, neither of them moved. Then, as if sensing his hesitation, the girl finally spoke, her voice a whisper so soft it seemed to come from everywhere at once. "You shouldn't have come." The words floated between the bookshelves, not angry, not welcoming, just sorrowful. I didn't mean to," Ethan managed to stammer, his voice sounding small in the cavernous space. "I got lost. I was just trying to find my way." The girl's eyes flickered, something like pity, or was it fear, passing over her face. "Temurun isn't found by accident," she said. "It calls to you. It pulls those who stray, those who don't know they're already lost." Ethan shivered, the cold biting into his skin now. He glanced down at the book in his hands, feeling its strange warmth pulse against his palms like a trapped heartbeat. "You know what this place is," he said. It wasn't a question. The girl lowered her arm and took a step closer. Up close, she seemed even less real, more like a memory of someone, a fading echo. There were faint smudges on her arms, like ash or dust, and her bare feet made no sound against the wooden floor. "This is the place where stories end," she whispered. "And once you are written into it, it's very hard to be unwritten." Her words landed in Ethan's gut like stones. He looked around wildly now, at the endless shelves, the endless books, each one a name, each one a life, trapped and catalogued forever. "How do I leave?" he asked. His voice cracked, betraying the panic swelling in his chest. "There's still a way," the girl said, but she looked over her shoulder as if afraid something might be listening. "Not all doors are the same. Some lead deeper, some lead out." "Doors," Ethan repeated, heart hammering. She nodded, her expression, "Grave. There's a passage at the end of the library, but you must choose carefully." Her voice dropped lower. "If you choose wrong, you'll be trapped here, like the others." "Others?" Ethan croaked, a new horror blooming inside him. The girl didn't answer. She only glanced again toward the endless shelves. And now, as Ethan strained to listen, he realized the whispers he had heard before had not stopped. They were everywhere, soft, broken voices leaking from the very walls, from the cracks between the books. They were voices of those who had chosen wrong. "You have to trust your fear," the girl said urgently. "Not your eyes, not your mind." "Why are you helping me?" Ethan asked, stepping closer, desperate. The girl hesitated. Shadows seemed to pull at the edges of her form, blurring her slightly. "Because once, I didn't have anyone to warn me." A heavy silence settled between them. Then she turned swiftly and pointed toward a narrow passage between the shelves. So narrow, Ethan had missed it before. Beyond it, he saw nothing but deeper darkness. "You must go now," she said, "before it finds you." Ethan didn't dare ask what it was. Clutching the book tighter to his chest, he forced himself to move toward the narrow passage. His legs felt heavy, like he was walking through deep water. Every step seemed louder, more intrusive, echoing off the high ceilings. Just before he slipped into the passageway, he looked back. The girl was still standing there, her pale face lit by the dim, sickly light filtering through the stained glass windows. And then, just before the shadows swallowed her completely, she whispered something he barely caught. "Not every story ends the same." Then she was gone, and Ethan was alone. Ahead, the dark passage twisted and turned, leading into the unknown. But somewhere beyond it, a door waited, and with it, a chance to escape. If he chose wisely. The narrow passage pressed in on Ethan from both sides, the shelves towering so high they seemed to scrape the dark ceiling. The farther he went, the colder the air became, until his breath floated before him in misty puffs. The whispers that haunted the main library fell away, swallowed by a heavier silence, the kind that weighed on his shoulders, thick and ancient. At last, the passage ended, and Ethan stepped out into a place he could not understand. A hallway stretched before him, so long he could not see its end. It was lined with doors, dozens, hundreds, maybe thousands, each one different, each one strange. Some doors were made of wood, battered and cracked. Others gleamed with polished brass or cold, slick stone. Some were so small he would have to crawl through, others so tall they vanished into the gloom above. Symbols covered them, some familiar, like simple handprints or circles, and others twisted into patterns he couldn't recognize, symbols that made his eyes ache just to look at them. A low hum filled the air, almost a vibration deep in his chest, as if the very hallway was alive, waiting for him to choose. Ethan took a shaky step forward. As he moved, some doors pulsed faintly, like a heartbeat. Others seemed to lean slightly closer, as if sensing his presence. He remembered the girl's words. Trust your fear, not your eyes, not your mind. His fear told him one thing, clear and sharp. This was a trap. A door to his left caught his eye. It was carved from bone-white wood, covered in childlike drawings, stick figures dancing beneath a black sun. Through a crack beneath it, he thought he saw a shadow shift. A low giggle sounded from behind it. Light and playful at first, until it stretched too long, turning sharp and wrong. Ethan hurried past. Another door was covered entirely in mirrors. Each mirror reflected a twisted version of himself. Faces, warped with fear, smiles that didn't match the eyes. As he passed, the reflections turned to follow him, smiling wider, their mouths splitting too far across their faces. He kept moving, heart pounding harder now. Then he passed a door that was nothing but black iron, blistered and charred, as if it had been through some terrible fire. A faint smell of burning filled the air around it. From deep within, Ethan heard faint sobbing, not of one voice, but of many, tangled together like a broken choir. He turned away, bile rising in his throat. None of these are right, he thought. None of them feel wrong the right way. And then he saw it. Near the end of the hall, nearly hidden behind a sagging tapestry, was a door unlike the others. It was plain, unremarkable. Old, splintered wood, a single black handprint pressed into its surface. No glow, no sounds, no pull of twisted laughter or whispered voices. Just a simple, chilling presence. As Ethan stepped closer, the air grew heavier, colder. His skin prickled, and a tightness wrapped around his chest as if unseen hands were trying to push him back. This is the one, his fear whispered. This is the door that feels wrong. His fingers brushed the door's surface. The black handprint was sticky, like it had been freshly pressed there just moments ago. A chill ran up his arm into his bones. For a moment, he hesitated. Choosing wrongly could mean being trapped here forever, lost among the empty doors and whispering shelves, another name on another shelf. But if he did nothing, he thought of the girl in white. He thought of the library filled with books bearing names, lives frozen in ink and dust. Gritting his teeth, Ethan grabbed the handle. It was ice cold, and, for a breathless moment, it felt as if the door itself resisted him, testing his resolve. Then, with a shudder that seemed to pass through the entire hallway, the door swung open. Blinding white light flooded out, washing over him, searing away the cold, the mist, the endless, hungry silence. For a moment, Ethan could see nothing, only pure, endless white. And then he stepped through. Behind him, the door slammed shut with a sound like a final heartbeat. The whispers ceased. The hallway, the library, the town, all of it vanished, and Ethan fell forward into something new, something unknown. The fall felt endless. Ethan tumbled through the blinding, white, weightless, breathless. No up, no down, only the strange sensation of moving without moving. Then, as suddenly as it began, the light dimmed. His feet hit solid ground with a jolt that rattled his bones. He staggered forward, gasping, blinking hard against the brightness. Slowly, the world sharpened into focus. He stood in a vast, circular chamber. Its walls rose high into a dome of smoky glass, and around the curve of the room, shelves spiraled upward. Endless rows of books once again. But these were different. These books pulsed faintly, as if breathing. Their covers shimmered, their titles shifting like living things. At the center of the chamber stood a tall grandfather clock. Its hands moved backward, ticking steadily in reverse. And beside it, sitting in a high-backed chair carved from black wood, was the old man. The man with the black umbrella. But here, he looked different. Taller, stronger. The bright gleam in his eyes had sharpened to a blade's edge, and his smile was no longer merely strange. It was something deeper, older, wiser, and dangerous. Ethan's heart kicked against his ribs. "Welcome," the old man said, his voice filling the vast chamber, easily, though he spoke no louder than a whisper. "You've come far." Ethan swallowed hard, forcing words past his dry throat. "Where am I?" The man tilted his head slightly, regarding him as one might a particularly interesting insect. "You stand in the archive," he said, "the true heart of Temurun, where all lost stories are kept." He gestured around at the endless shelves. Each book a life, each life a story unfinished. Some wandered in, some were pulled. Few ever find their way here. He smiled thinly. Fewer still stand where you do now. Ethan clutched the book in his arms tighter, the one bearing his name. "Why? Me?" he demanded. "Why bring me here?" The old man rose slowly from his chair. His movements were precise, almost elegant. He walked to the great clock and ran a long, bony finger along its backward-moving hands. "Because you still believe," he said simply. Ethan frowned. "Believe in what?" "In the impossible," the old man said, his eyes glittering. "Most who come to Temurun have already given up, on wonder, on fear, on mystery. They think the world has no more secrets left. They do not belong here. They become inventory." He smiled, showing teeth that were just a little too sharp. "But you," he continued, "you saw the mist and stepped forward. You saw the empty town and stayed. You listened to your fear and let it guide you." Ethan's mind raced. None of this made sense. It was too much, too strange. And yet, some deep part of him, some quiet childhood instinct whispered that it was true. "But what do you want from me?" he asked, his voice barely above a whisper. The old man turned from the clock and faced him fully. "Nothing," he said. "You have already given enough. The fact that you reached this place means you have earned a choice." He reached into the folds of his coat and pulled out a small, ancient-looking key, wrought from black iron, its bow twisted into the shape of a closed eye. He held it out toward Ethan. "This key," he said, "opens a door that will return you to your world, to your life." Ethan stared at it, heart thundering. "And if I don't take it?" he asked, unsure why he asked at all. The old man's smile deepened, almost fond. "Then you may stay," he said. "Temurun is always in need of new keepers, new writers, new watchers." The air in the chamber seemed to tighten, to pull at Ethan's skin. He thought of the girl in white, of the way she had faded, almost swallowed by the place. Had she refused the key? Had she stayed too long, her story unfinished? Ethan reached out. The key was heavy, cold as stone. The old man's hand closed briefly over Ethan's when he took it. He'd a touch that felt both real and unreal, like grasping mist. "Remember," the old man said softly, his voice suddenly very near, as if speaking straight into Ethan's mind. "Even when you leave, a part of you will always belong to Temurun." Chamber dimmed. The books began to hum, a low, vibrating chorus. The old man stepped back into the shadows, and before Ethan in the stone floor, a small door appeared, simple, plain, and waiting. The key grew warm in his hand, pulsing gently. Without looking back, Ethan stepped toward the door. Without hesitation, he turned the key. The door creaked open, spilling warm sunlight onto his face, and with a breath held tight in his chest, Ethan crossed the threshold. Light swallowed him. Warmth flooded Ethan's skin. A soft breeze touched his face, and for a moment, a beautiful, aching moment, he thought it had all been a dream, that the mist, the library, the endless hall of doors, the whispering shelves, had all been nothing more than a strange nightmare spun by exhaustion and rain. He opened his eyes. He was back in his car. The driver's seat creaked as he shifted. The steering wheel was cold under his hands. His windshield was clear now, and sunlight poured down from a clean, blue sky. The storm was gone. The mist was gone. The world looked normal, crisp and sharp around the edges as if scrubbed clean. A long time, Ethan just sat there breathing, listening. Birdsong floated from somewhere among the trees. Insects buzzed lazily through the tall grass. Far off, he could even hear the faint rush of a river. It was real. He was home. With trembling hands, he turned the key in the ignition. The engine rumbled to life, smooth and familiar. The road stretched. Out ahead, winding through the hills like a bright ribbon, no sign of Temurun. No crooked sign, no ruined town crouching in the mist. Just the long, lonely road and the clear day. And yet, as Ethan drove, he couldn't shake the feeling that something was following him. Not something he could see. There were no cars in the rearview mirror, no dark figures on the side of the road, but he felt it all the same. A pressure, a presence, a thread, thin but unbreakable, still tying him to that other place. Hours later, when he finally pulled into his driveway, the normalcy of his little home felt almost absurd. The potted plants on the porch, the mail piled neatly at the door, the worn welcome mat, everything exactly where he had left it. And yet he didn't feel the same. Inside, the house smelled faintly of dust and wood polish. The clock on the wall ticked forward, thank God, forward, but the sound seemed louder, sharper somehow, each second slicing the air like a blade. He dropped his keys on the counter and sank onto the couch, running a hand over his face. It's over, he told himself. It's over. The rational part of his brain began to knit excuses together. Maybe he had gotten turned around during the storm. Maybe the stress, the isolation. Maybe it had all been some kind of hallucination. A dream. A trick of a tired mind. He almost believed it until he opened his backpack. He hadn't remembered bringing it with him, and yet there it was, sitting heavy on the floor where he had tossed it down. Frowning, he unzipped it. Inside, beneath his spare clothes and a battered map, something cold and heavy pressed against his fingers. It was a book, bound in cracked brown leather with gold lettering almost worn away. His heart stopped when he read the title. The Story of Ethan, continued. His hands shook as he opened it. The first page was blank, the second page too. Then, on the third page, fresh words began to form, ink bleeding across the paper in slow, deliberate strokes, as if an invisible hand were writing at that very moment. The sentence formed before his wide, horrified eyes. He thought he was free. Ethan slammed the book shut, heart thundering against his ribs. He looked around his living room, suddenly alien, suddenly too still. A soft sound, a whisper of turning pages, came from somewhere deep inside the house. He wasn't alone. Temurun hadn't let him go. It had simply let him believe. If you loved this chilling story, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. Tell us, would you dare to walk into Temurun? Share your theories and stay tuned for more suspenseful journeys. Hit the bell icon so you never miss a step into the unknown.